President Biden's doctor, Kevin O'Connor, reportedly had met with a Parkinson's disease specialist at the White House back in January. This is what the Post is reporting. Biden's doctor also meeting with a cardiologist and one other person. These are visitor logs that were reviewed by the New York Post. Kansas Senator Roger Marshall, who is also a physician, wrote this on X, quote, "Americans have the right to know if the president is in good health and capable of fulfilling the duties of commander-in-chief. Cognitive function is as important, if not more important, as physical health." Let's bring in the man himself, Kansas Senator Roger Marshall. He is a member of the Senate Budget, Homeland Security, Agriculture, Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committees. He's a very busy man, and he joins us this morning. Senator, it's good to see you, and I want to pick up and for you to put that physician hat back on. First and foremost, what do you make of this visitor log reporting coming from the Post? Kevin O'Connor. And the other issue here, if you were treating President Biden, would you have, because of his age, asked for cognitive testing to be done like any other patient when someone gets to this point in their life?
Right, sure. Well, several thoughts to share with you. So it was more than one visit. My sources tell me that a neurologist, a specialist in Parkinson's, has been in the White House 10 times over the past year. Let me tell you what, these types of doctors are so rare, they're not making house calls for just anybody. So 10 times there. When I get together with groups of physicians and they ask me what's going on, Parkinson's disease is at the top of the differential diagnosis. And I don't know if he has it or not. We need to do a physical exam. He needs MRI. CAT scans, probably a dopamine scan. There's lots of testing, but if you look at the way he shuffles, the way he swings his arms, the way he freezes at times, he has bradykinesia at times as well. Even just the downfall from last fall. Last fall, he was walking heel to toe. Now he's putting his toes down first when he walks. All these are consistent with Parkinson's. So yes, Americans deserve to know. If a president had a heart attack a month ago, don't you think that before the coming election, Americans would want to know what's his cardiac output, what's his EKG look like now, what's his latest hard cath show? So yes, Americans deserve to know the cognitive ability of what the president is at this point in time as well as going forward.
So this multitude of specialists, 10 times they came to the White House, you're saying, but explain to me what exactly the president's doctor is looking for here. You mentioned a couple of things. I mean, I know vascular dementia has been mentioned for President Biden because of the symptoms that he's showing. And again, I know you don't treat the president. I'm not asking you that, but in a general sense, you know, also the shoes. You know, there's been people have taken a good look at the fact that he used to wear dress shoes. Now he wears those tennis shoes. Does this all factor into what you're hearing and seeing?
You know, exactly. First of all, there's several different types of Parkinson's. Some of them have a bigger impact on his cognitive abilities than other types of Parkinson's do. So, again, if there's nothing to hide, then the president should do a cognitive test. My guess is he has done one, and certainly they've done a neurological examination. That would be part of an annual examination. And an in-depth, I guarantee you that this Parkinson's disease doctor that showed up there did an in-depth neurological exam, and America deserves to know. Again, I don't know if the president has Parkinson's or not, but we're concerned about it. And, you know, 4 years is a long time. Any way you look at this, I think we end up with Kamala Harris as the president, either going to the future or the nominee now.
Well, let's talk about these moves that are being made across the aisle as Congress comes back to work today, the Senate and the House. Obviously, there is a lot at stake for this country. Some calling this a constitutional crisis because of the state of President Biden's health. Virginia Senator Mark Warner reportedly just scrapped a plan for Senate Democrats to meet tonight to discuss President Biden's political future. And The Hill reports that Warner wants to whip up support for Biden to drop out. Maybe he needs more time. That would make sense. But apparently he's concerned the president could cost Democrats even in safe races, he could cost them seats. And then you've got these 4 top House Democrats reportedly calling on Biden to step aside during a call that was held by Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries last night. Judiciary Committee Ranking Member Jerry Nadler, Veterans Affairs Ranking Member Mark Takano, Administration Ranking Member Joe Morrell, Armed Services Ranking Member Adam Smith. They all privately want Biden to get out. And then you've got 5 House Democrats that have publicly called on him to step aside. There is so much at stake here, Senator.
Yeah, it is. This will be the toughest political week of Joe Biden's life. Here's the challenge. Joe Biden's in free fall. The Democrats are in free fall. They don't have any type of a bench. What Americans are rejecting is the Democrat policies going on here. Think about the potential successors, whether it's Kamala or Newsom, that they both are politically left of Joe Biden, and they're polling worse than Joe Biden. Why? Because they don't want to fix the border, because they don't care about inflation or not. Their policies will make inflation worse. They'll keep the border open. Their policies are tax, borrow money, spend. That's going to lead to more inflation. Americans know that. So the Democrats are in this quandary. They are stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's nowhere to go. The bench is bare. Everybody is on the bench is left of Joe Biden. America does not want another big government, progressive person running the White House. They know that inflation will get worse. Have you ever heard any of those people we're talking about saying, I will secure the border? No, none of them will say that. And we saw how the border czar, Kamala Harris, handled the border. She's given us 11 million illegal aliens across the border in the last 3.5 years.
But I will say this, though. You do see the mainstream media, who has, let's be clear here, defended President Biden for all of his term, even when the questions did start to get asked about his cognitive ability and his age. In the Washington Post this morning, Kamala Harris walks into the storm and keeps her footing. You see the wagons starting to circle around Kamala Harris. And I have to point out here, from an election standpoint, if there's $240 million that's been raised by Biden and Harris, she can technically, legally access that funding. And correct me if I'm wrong, but that is what seems to be in play right now in Washington and the conversations behind the scenes.
Yeah. Any way you look at it, either Kamala's going to be the nominee now, or if, heaven forbid, Joe Biden get reelected, she'll be the president within a year, maybe less, based upon what I'm seeing from Joe Biden's health. But again, Kamala Harris is a big government progressive. She will increase your taxes. She will keep us in never-ending wars. She will give us Medicaid for all. She will raise your taxes. She will keep inflation around. She will keep gasoline at $6 a gallon, and America's rejecting all of that. She's politically left of Joe Biden, and that's why Americans rejecting her. That's why her polling numbers are even worse than Joe Biden, and this is why the Democrats are caught between a rock and a hard place.
Well, Senator, this week is crucial because the country, we are at the center of the world stage. NATO is this week. We are hosting, Senator. So not only are you going to have these leaders, but also their staffs that are all going to be descending on Washington amid what many are calling a constitutional crisis in this country because of President Biden. What can we expect this week from the NATO conference?
Well, I expect a lot of crying and whining out of NATO. When I sit down with NATO leaders, the first thing they ask me is, what was your president thinking when he left Afghanistan? If it wasn't for the Afghanistan debacle, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine. And the second thing they start whining about is if President Trump is reelected, they're going to have to pay more. Look, America has made a huge commitment in Europe. We have 100,000 troops there. Lord knows how many tanks and jets we have there as well. But you think about it, you line up the GDP of all these NATO countries, America is about 54% of that GDP, but we're spending 70% of the dollars on national defense. These other countries need to suck it up. France needs to suck it up. They're under 2%. Russia has 6 times more tanks, 6 times more jets than France does. We need to shift some of those resources to the South Seas, to the China Sea. So look, NATO needs to suck it up. Those countries need to be spending more money. They have every right to be concerned about Donald Trump because he'll hold them accountable. He's a president that will hold NATO accountable. We'll do our share. They need to do their share.
Even the New York Times writes this morning that Europe now needs to shoulder more of the responsibility for their own defenses. Senator Roger Marshall, welcome back to work. Welcome back, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.